This is The Wow Effect, the podcast for women entrepreneurs who are scaling big. I'm Mallory Steele, and every episode expect honest conversations, actionable insights, and stories that make you say, wow. What if your purpose isn't a straight line, but a bold, uncomfortable journey? In today's episode of The Wow Effect, Amber Welch shares her wildly non-linear path from Army medic to tech exec through startups, a six-figure setback, and ultimately back to creating real local impact. We talk rebuilding after loss, trusting your instincts, why relationships beat selling every single time, and how seeking discomfort can expand your world. Amber's story is smart, honest, and deeply human, and a reminder that the most powerful growth happens when you choose to be uncomfortable on purpose. Welcome to the Wow Effect podcast. Amber, I have you with me today, and I'm so excited to have this conversation. I know we haven't known each other for a long time, but I think we hit it off right away because our values are aligned, and I was just ready to jump all over everything that you were saying. So I'm so excited you're doing this with me, and I want to give you a chance to open the floor, but also jump into your entrepreneurship story because you have so many things you've done in the past. So we'll start with that and then bring us up to the present. But welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be chatting with you today. So thank you for having me on. My story is a very windy path. So the first thing I always tell everybody, especially if they're newer to the entrepreneur space, is if you think that somehow you shouldn't be here, or you're feeling that imposter syndrome because you're like, oh, I didn't come the traditional way. There isn't a traditional way. We all get here because of, as entrepreneurs, we don't fit in the box, right? Like throughout life, we're like, I just don't quite fit. And that's definitely my story. So my background is actually, at 18, I joined the Army as a medic. And the plan at that point in life was to go to med school. And 9/11 happened and life happened. And then I ended up out of the Army for medical reasons and just took a pause and reevaluated what my life plan was. In the process of that, ended up married and with a daughter, and then was like, okay, I want to go back to school. What do I want to do? And I am what most younger people deem an elder millennial. I don't like the term elder. I'm like Betty White in that I will always forever be like a teenager in my brain. And so when I did go back to school, our generation was very much like, you go to college, you go for business. So there was kind of like these ideals that were presented to us. And so I was like, well, I'll just go that route. I don't know what I want to do. I'm going to start there. And I had a great advisor at the time who said, have you ever considered accounting or finance? And I thought she was insane. I don't love math. And not to say I'm not good at it, but I just didn't like it. And I thought she was a Looney Tune. And she's like, no, it's not that. It's problem solving. And you have a naturally subjective way of solving problems, which is what finance is. That's how people run companies. And she's like, think of it like business on steroids, because you learn all of those things and then so much more. So I ended up actually double majoring. And back then they didn't have a degree that allowed you to cross major in finance or accounting along with computer science, which is, I mean, like fintech is a very common term now, but then it was not. So I actually had to get permission. So I have a master's in accounting and finance, and then I have a bachelor's in computer science focused on coding. I, from the early aughts, really just saw that intersecting, and this was long before it did. And so after that, I went into public accounting for a handful of years as an auditor, and then realized quickly there that it was too boxed in for me. And one thing people that get to know me realize very quickly is I like to blow the box up. So that wasn't going to be a good fit long term. But I liked the—
It's not even inside the box. There just is no box.
Yeah, exactly. So I ended up going into the corporate world, which I'm really thankful for. I got an opportunity to work with some incredible companies. My largest role was with one of the largest global tech companies. At the time I was with them, I was helping oversee 56 billion in revenues. And that was a long time ago. So I imagine it's quite a bit more now. And I ended up leaving there only because of I was limited on how high I could go. The company is not US owned, and they're very particular about who is at the top. And I was only a few seats from the top, so I pretty much was as high as I was going to go. And I was still in my early 30s at that point, and I did not want to. I don't like being told no, not when it's on limitations like that. So I ended up jumping into the startup space and fell in love. Did not know until that point that I was an entrepreneur. And initially I went in with, I was an associate director, which is like a partner at an accounting group, and was helping them develop a revenue vertical within their company. And this was in the very, very early days of what emerging tech now calls crypto or blockchain. We lovingly refer to it as Web3, and that kind of boxes it all under one umbrella. And so I was the only one that understood anything to do with that. And the CEO of that company at the time said, hey, if you can grow our area for this type of startup by 4 new clients this year, I'll let you just run with it. And so I actually 10x'd that, added 40 clients and about $750,000 in ARR or revenue to their books, and decided that I was in love with the startup space, especially emerging tech. And ended up leaving there because of the first scary bear market happened. And of course, like most conservative financial companies, they backed way off. And I was like, I can do this on my own. And so I grew my own brand, served as a fractional C-suite member, primarily a CFO, but I've also acted as a COO and a CEO. Actually grew my own project as well in the space, and last year pitched at Web Summit, which is the largest tech conference globally. So you pitched to like 73,000 people, which is insane in hindsight to think about, and completely shifted gears. Had a really bad experience, unfortunately, with someone taking advantage of my kindness. Decided I didn't want to toy with the level of deceit that does unfortunately happen. And more importantly, I wanted to have an impact. That was kind of what was driving me all along. And so I decided the best way to do that is locally. And my husband's a home inspector. We own a home inspection company. And I was like, what better way to have an impact than in real estate, which I know sounds like wildly different. But in this year, got my license here in Florida where I'm located, have been helping people be smarter. I have a tagline on social media. I'm the real estate CFO. So basically helping everyday people think more like wealthy people do with their home investments. Your everyday home can work for you, make you money. So why wouldn't it? So doing that. And then I'm also launching a new product as well here in the coming weeks that helps small and medium businesses, and the normal entrepreneur thing. It never stops. It's a wheel that just kind of keeps going.
You just shared so much gold in your whole journey, your whole story, and I'm sure everybody listening is just exhausted hearing it of like how much you fit in those many years. So it's inspiring. So I think you have such a beautiful story that you're sharing, and I have a few questions. I could take this in a few different directions, but growing a revenue vertical in a company. Did you have a strategy for that? What was your thinking to say, and the confidence to be able to say, no, I can own this. I'm going to run with this.
So here is something, this is something that most people are really shocked by when they meet me. And that is the very first conference I ever went to. I walked in, and this was not a large conference. We're talking like 15 booths in like a Holiday Inn Express, which there's nothing wrong with those kinds of conferences. You make wonderful relationships there. I walked in, did not have a clue how to talk to anybody about what I was doing. I walked back out to my car, called my husband, and broke down in tears. He was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And he gave me valuable advice. He said, and being able to just talk to people. So, how I grew it, and this is how I recommend anything sales-based to go, is pretty simple. You don't sell. You just worry about the relationship. You ask people questions, you learn about who they are, about what drives them, what drives their product, what their needs are, their problems, and all of the rest of it kind of just happens on its own. So in that space, what I really did was, and the reason it was so successful was I listened to what problems they had, and then I offered up solutions, even if it wasn't going to be with us. And 9 times out of 10, they would go with us because of people respect someone who's helping them just to help them.
We're all completely on the same page, and I've tried sharing that with people too, where it's like, it's just a relationship. People don't want to be sold to, they want to buy. But it's interesting how many people are not used to making friends, right? Building that relationship. How do you build a relationship?
And it gets harder when you become an adult, for sure.
Yeah. But asking questions, like genuinely asking questions to show that you actually care and are interested enough to know what that person is doing and what they actually need. Like you touched on that, right? Finding out what do they actually need, and you're just matchmaking. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like the biggest thing is most people want to, I actually got this from someone I met with the other day. They said that the best advice in really tricky situations that they have is everybody's always doing the best that they can right where they are. So, if you're in a weird or awkward situation, that other person is doing the absolute best they can in that exact moment. So I think just being able to recognize that and not being afraid to ask questions. I think that's the hardest part for most people, is what questions to ask. I tend to be very self-deprecating. So I find I lean into my awkwardness. So when I am at like conferences and you go to these like side events or these things, like how do you introduce yourself? How do you insert yourself in those conversations? I found like coming up with something kind of laugh worthy that's just awkward, that's very authentic to who I am. And so it naturally opens the door then to be like, hi, I'm Amber. Who are you? What do you do? I mean, just general questions. Most people just want to be heard and seen and talk. So that's kind of where I lead with everything.
Amazing. And kudos to you. You spoke in front of the massive audience in Portugal, right? It was in Lisbon.
Yes.
Yeah. What was that experience like?
Now I always say anybody who is truly an entrepreneur has to be a little bit insane to do it. Because you have to have that slight insanity to have the genius that goes along with like the vision, right? And so it's definitely no different with public speaking. I weirdly love public speaking, which I know is just strange, and most people think I'm insane, especially because I don't really like attention. So everything I do and am driven to do is about serving others and the impact I can have, but it not being about me. So that seems very contradictory to something like that. But it was extremely intimidating because I'm getting up in front of literally thousands of people, and they only give you, I think it's 2 minutes. You get a 2-minute pitch to these incredible people who have been like judges on Shark Tank, or the one over in the UK, I forget the name of it, Devil's Den or something. It's something like
Dragon's
that.
Den.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's it. So these people have been like beyond successful, and you're getting up in front of thousands of people and pitching to them, and you have to get your whole story in 2 minutes. I was sweating buckets, and I think like the key with it again is I leaned into the awkwardness. I engaged the audience from the very beginning, and I kept in mind it's a story. People engage with stories. It's why naturally we tend to watch podcasts. We love YouTube and TikTok. People want to like engage with people's story. So it's really about taking whatever your product and what you're doing is and connecting it to the human side of it. Like the more tech driven we get, the more we crave the human connection, which I find fascinating.
That is fascinating. And you are very knowledgeable in the tech area too. Obviously being in fintech, and you talked about blockchain and Web3 and crypto. For a woman who's listening who has no clue about where to start for any of that, what would you recommend to them?
There is a plethora of options. So when I very first, I dabbled in it personally because I had a background, obviously, with a comp sci degree. But there are way more options now than there used to be. It's as simple as going onto YouTube and typing in introduction to Web3 or what is crypto. You will get significant amounts of resources. There is a lot of really good female founded education programs on like that are free resources, both locally and digitally, for just understanding the basics. I've taught them before for different groups and individuals. Reach out to me. I would be happy to answer questions. I never want to deter anyone who wants to learn something. I think learning is our biggest gift that we're given.
Amazing. If they don't pick it up, are they going to be left behind?
It's such a tricky question because I do think there's going to be some level of knowledge that comes to us. But I think this goes back to kind of like, think of the internet. I mean, right, we're recording this with me sitting in my home office. My iPhone is currently acting as my webcam. My AirPods are my microphone. And if you had said this is what we were going to be doing, 15, 20 years ago, whenever it all kind of started to roll out, we would have thought we were like a little bit cuckoo bananas. But here we are. This is an everyday part of life. We use our phones to tap and pay for things. I remember in the 80s when credit cards came out, everyone was like, this is never going to take off. And look where we are now. We're using our phones, using a credit card on our phone to tap and pay. So I think like the honest answer to that, if people are genuine about what the reality of the future holds, is that tech has to meet us where we are to some degree. So mass adoption is really going to happen when we take that technology and we make it usable for everyday people. There's always going to be people that know more in everything. And I would never discourage anybody from seeking out that extra knowledge, but I don't think you're going to be left behind necessarily, as long as you are always openly inquisitive about whatever new way we are integrating technology into our human lives.
Yeah, you may be forced to embrace it rather than embracing it early when it's optional.
I mean, like, look at most of our parents, right? My parents, boomer age, they are not tech people. And the amount of calls that I get from, and my husband gets from my father-in-law or my mother on how to do little things that are very common for us, is a lot. And they are attempting to embrace it. And there are definitely hiccups, but I think the key is that they are open to the idea of it. So the only way to really get left behind is if you intentionally are taking yourself off the grid, and that's your lifestyle choice, which there's nothing wrong with.
Yeah, fair enough. So jumping over the soft side for a minute, you know, you did so much, right? You've shared a lot in your journey. Did you ever struggle with burnout?
I heard a really interesting phrase actually a couple of days ago. I was listening to a podcast, another podcast. I'm a big podcast listener. I just think there's so much knowledge to be shared there, and it's a good way to do it while you're doing other things. And I was listening to another female founder who has multiple 9-figure companies, which is, I would aspire to have that much. That way I can give back that much. And she said something that kind of made me pause. And she said, we're not candles. We don't burn out. And at first I was like, what is this lady saying? This is insanity. Of course we do. I've lived it. I have definitely been burnt out. And then she said the piece that really made me go, oh, and that was, if you are in a position where you're burnt out, then you're probably not doing the right thing. Because if you are really passionate about something, it fuels you. It doesn't drain you. So I think burnout it's a tricky situation because most of us live a good portion of our lives in jobs that we aren't passionate about. And that doesn't mean you have to be an entrepreneur or be the one running the show to be passionate. You can find passion and happiness in anything. I mean, I could be working at Costco and love my life day to day, and I'm passionate about it because of it works for me and it pays my bills. I love my job. But the second that you go from that equilibrium to this place of regret or struggle, that's when you need to really stop and pause and say, okay, is this serving me? And is this allowing me to serve the rest of the world? And I think that is kind of that overlap of burnout that we know as a society.
Yeah. So when you were growing these different businesses, I hear often, I'm almost there, I'm almost there, I'm almost there. Does that actually exist? Did you ever get there? Did it feel like consistent growth, or did it feel like everything exploded all at once?
I think it really depends on the type of business, but I think like you are never going to be arrived, right? Like I've heard some founders that say, oh, you should be planning your exit from the day you of inception. And I don't really necessarily agree with that unless it's purely an investment pivot for you, in which case, yes, you should. I think if you're passionate about the cause that's underlying whatever project you're working on, you're probably always going to be growing. There's always going to be some level of growth, especially with service. If you're doing something service-based, you will for sure. If it's a product, there's always going to be new iterations, new bug patches, new fixes, new product offerings. So I think for most people that find themselves in an entrepreneurial space, it's more that they meet a natural completion of some component of whatever they're doing, and then they find some new goal to set their sights on. At least that's been my experience. I can't say that's everybody, but I think like that's probably a more realistic one.
I love that you have the comp sci background, because you can tell in the language the bug fixes, and it's more of like collecting data. This data didn't work. Let's try this data. Let's try this route, rather than that failed. What was the part that failed? It's not about failing. It's a bug fix, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's life too, right? Like it's a journey. And it's funny because of that was not at all who I was when I was younger. There's kind of like this inside joke with my husband and I. When we met, it was very much, I was always focused on the next carrot. Like as for people who are like, carrot, what is she talking about? Like dangling of a carrot, right? That you're trying to meet the next objective, the next goal. And so even in my relationships, I was like, okay, how quick is he going to say, I love you? How quick are we going to get married? When are we buying a house? When are we doing this? I was always focused on that. And he made a comment once about, you need to learn to enjoy the journey from where you're at to that next goal. That's really what life's about. And at the time I didn't get it. Like it just it didn't sink in with me. It felt very inauthentic. And then as I've gotten older and I've learned to like live in that uncomfortable space, which I think is really the most beautiful place you can be in life I literally have a tattoo on my arm that says seek discomfort because of that. It's to remind myself every day that like the more I live in that uncomfortable space, the more I'm really cherishing the journey from one goal to the next. And that's where everything happens. That's the magic.
Have you seen that YouTube channel, Seek Discomfort?
Yeah, Yes Theory is actually what inspired it. They actually are, yeah. I mean, like I tattooed their catchphrase on my arm, which is probably a little bit, again, insane, but they happened to cross my my For You page on YouTube at just the right moment in life, where I just happened to be consuming a lot of that kind of content. I think I was doing audits at the time in public accounting. And so like I would have something playing while I was auditing on other screens, and something about it just really sunk in with me. And I think it was because my world felt so tiny, and it really inspired me. Every time I would put myself outside of my comfort zone, I found that my world would get a little bit bigger. And then it just kept happening and kept happening because at that moment in time, I did not feel like I could ever, like if you had told me I would be where I'm at now, I would think that you were nuts. I would not think that any of this was achievable for me in any capacity. And now it's such a normal part of life to intentionally put myself all over the place, like to go to countries I've never been to, sometimes on my own. And I'm a very tiny, for people like listening or watching, I'm not a big person. I'm like a 5'2" female. And so sometimes putting yourself in another country can seem like really scary. And it has been the most rewarding experience of my life, is intentionally putting myself in uncomfortable positions. My world is infinitely larger.
I think I actually feel uncomfortable when I'm not uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, you start to go a little crazy. Yeah, it's like, wait, nothing's happening. Nothing's changing. What now?
Yeah, I compare it to
what went wrong.
Yeah, when you're not feeling that good pain from a good workout, it's like, oh, that pain's gone. I got to get back in the gym. Got to get back into doing something before you get too comfortable, I guess.
Well, I think too, as a society, we've kind of come up with this, sorry, my earbud's about to fall out. We've unfortunately adopted this mentality of the Band-Aid fix, or take a pill and the headache goes away. And I think we've applied that too liberally in life, and we've forgotten the reward of the uncomfortable and the work that goes into it. And so like, exercise is a phenomenal example of that. Like, yes, you can go do things that make it perfect quicker, but it's just not the same. Like knowing you've put in the effort and you've put in the hard work to achieve what it is and where you are is a completely different experience. And the lived experience of that is worth so much. I mean, it's priceless in what you learn and how you can pass that along to other people.
I love that you lead with serving. And I think that's anyone I align with is they have the serving mentality, the serving at the core of everything that you do to make everything worthwhile. And, you talk about the passion, but also when you're serving and you're doing the right thing, it will lead to a bigger business. It will lead to more wealth. The money will follow. And we don't think about when we're starting out on day one, the protections you need to have, the bigger that you get. Do you have any insights for women who are, maybe they're past that point of looking for any kind of sale and any client? They probably have fired a few legacy clients and are delegating out, starting to build a team. Now they should be thinking about, how do I protect myself as this growth continues? Any thoughts around that?
Oh, I have so many. So I tend to be an open book. It's the level of transparency sometimes bites me in the rear, but I am a firm believer that like life should be operated in a very open space. And I will say, I like to think that I am a very good judge of character. And the best advice I can give is, even if you don't rely on that, do the due diligence. It's worth the time and money. I ended up with a 6-figure loss because I had somebody that unfortunately marked me 3 years before they became a part of my organization, which to me seems insane. I'm also a little bit flattered that they saw something in me 3 years before I did, but 6 figures later, it's extremely painful when this idea that you had that could impact people for a positive way is jeopardized by that. And, any entrepreneur knows that their idea is like a baby. Like it is so incredibly vulnerable to share that piece of yourself and grow a company and grow an idea and a business and trust other people with it. And unfortunately, I trusted the wrong person. I brought her on originally as part of my leadership team. Eventually, I brought her on as a co-founder and found out the hard way that she literally was not who she said she was. And part of that, I had done some due diligence, but she was a professional at what she did and knew how to clean her background properly. And so it's really hard sometimes. I mean, like, truly vet people, put periods of time in place to protect yourself. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to take that time. If someone's putting more pressure on you that you need to be rushed, they're probably not a good fit for you anyway. There's probably a reason that those flags are kind of going off in your brain. Don't ignore them. I unfortunately ignored my gut, and 6 figures later, which was my entire retirement that I had invested into this idea, I greatly, greatly hate that I did that. And not just because of the money, the impact. I mean, like, it affected a lot of people. I had people that had dedicated a lot of time and energy and sweat equity into believing in me and this product, and have to essentially wind it up because of that. It was incredibly painful, incredibly painful. So listen to yourself, trust that instinct. If you have it, it's there for a reason.
Yeah, it's an incredibly painful time that you're sharing. And I'm so grateful that you are sharing it, because I have heard other women share similar, but you don't know what you don't know. And it's not something that gets talked about often. And I think men actually talk about it a lot more, about how much money they lose in business. Yeah, we make tons of money, but we also lose lots of money. And those are all lessons learned, but they're still lessons learned. They're still painful experiences that if we can learn from somebody else's experience and not go through it, then start to think about the different protections to have in place before jumping on the next shiny thing, because it sounds too good to be true. Probably is.
But I think too, there's like this stigma attached that if you are in charge of something, leading something, or a female in a space that's predominantly male, that having vulnerability makes you weak. I tend to think it's the opposite, because if it instills a sense of integrity that you don't see often. It shouldn't be the exception. It should be the rule, but unfortunately is not. And I think the willingness to show where things have went wrong and you've grown past that is an excellent demonstration to others of that growth, of the quality of individual that you are as a leader. I way more would trust somebody that came to me wanting to work with me or asking me to invest or do whatever, that said, hey, here's where my hiccups were, but here's what I learned from it. My path wasn't like this easy path. I mean, like we joke about it, right? But like a lot of times people don't think about the fact that people that had the struggles, how much they have learned through those are priceless experiences that make them excellent at what they do for a reason.
Yeah. And life goes on, right? Here you are afterwards, still an entrepreneur. It didn't kill your ambition, and you're that much better for it. You're that much stronger. Those are all cliches, but you're also still going after your dreams. Right?
And I would caution people not to think that you can't pause. Because of when all of this happened, I had been on an upward trajectory and running so hard and so fast and so long that it made me go, I can't stop, right? Like, it doesn't matter what's going on. I need to just keep going. And that was when I started to feel burnout about something I was extremely passionate about. And that made me go, oh, this is my body telling me I need to be listening. Because if there's another, I have all these sayings I hear, I just steal everybody's great ideas is really what it is. And it's, your body will tell you, right? The universe will tell you. At first it's a whisper, eventually it becomes a scream. And I had some health issues come up. I had a lot of emotional and mental health that really like made me stop and go, I need to pause. I need to figure out what I'm doing to go forward. And for me, that ended up being a pretty significant career change. Well, I thought it was. It's sort of started that way, and it's sort of winding its way back, which is always interesting to me, how like where you're meant to be, you ultimately end up anyway. But I mean, like, don't be afraid to take that time. I took like 3 or 4 months just to process, because I had felt like I had lost a family member. You go through genuine, like the actual path of grief as if you lose somebody. It's very much that way when you lose a business or you lose something very major in your life. And there is nothing wrong with needing to process that. And so I did. I just took some time and I paused and said, okay, I'm going to keep like a skeleton crew going of what I need to until I decide what I'm doing, and then make that decision once I feel like I'm in the right headspace to do it.
Yeah, such a good point. And you're losing a piece of your own identity. So then it's, who are you? Who do you want to become going forward?
Yeah. And I will never grow up. Like, I'm forever Peter Pan. That's why I refer to Betty White. But the beautiful thing about her was she always had this mentality of, you're never too old to be young. And so I very much admired that about her, and that's what I want to attain to be, is the idea of, I never want to be so grown that I'm grown. Like, that's boring.
Yeah. So Betty White's a great one. Have there been any other influences in your life that have, that you love to follow, whether it was an author or somebody close to you in entrepreneurship?
I'm a big fan of Stephen Bartlett. He has Diary of a CEO podcast, and he has just a plethora of incredible humans on there. I love to just digest everything I can from there. I follow him quite a bit. Matthew Gray has good content. It's kind of like, there's a lot of really big names, and I feel like I infinitely want to learn. So like, anytime that I see any kind of title of something that I think might have value in it, whether it's reading it or listening to it or whatever, I tend to do that just because if I know I will learn something. Sometimes it's in really weird places. Like, I've learned some really great tips for communication from like former CIA operatives, listening to them speak about their journey and like how to communicate better and more effectively. So don't ever underestimate where you might learn something incredible. I actually learn a fair amount from my daughter, who will be 20 in March. She views the world completely different than me and has a very different perspective than me. And I like hearing how she views things and relates to it, because of being raised, one, whether or not you believe in it. I'm a Capricorn, so I tend to be very on point for the stereotype of that personality. And the joke in my house is that I'm like a porcupine. Like if you get too close, you're going to get poked by my quills, because I like have my own little personal bubble. And so she is not like that. She is all feelings all of the time. And I think there's something really beautiful about seeing the world that way, at that level and depth of emotion. And so like, that's why I say, don't undervalue where you can learn. You can learn everywhere if you are open to it.
I think that's so good. I love that. You went through some different shifts, and you didn't start out in entrepreneurship right away. Did you go through any mindset shifts transitioning from employee to, did you jump right into like a business owner role, or were you self-employed doing all of the things at a certain point? Any mindset shifts that happened along your journey?
I mean, like day to day, there's mindset shifts. There's probably 75% of the time I sit and I think, what am I doing? I am insane. Why am I not just a W-2 employee? It would be so much simpler if I didn't have to be the one responsible making the decisions. It's a lot. And I think a lot of people underestimate how much work. They think if they go into business for themselves, it's going to be easier. And because you get to make the decisions, it's not. It's harder because you get to make the decisions. And everybody relies on you, whether you have employees under you or contractors under you or not. Even if it's just you, everything is pivoted off of you. And so for me, I think there was a bit of a transition going from the corporate world, and then really that time that I spent at the finance group where they were servicing on a fractional basis other startups. I think that was kind of a mental transition on how to view things from that space and, dip my toe into what entrepreneurship looked like, because I was acting as an CFO to entrepreneurs. And so I saw a glimpse of what they were doing day to day. And then when I fully went into it, I was really fortunate to have clients. Like the second I decided to, and I let some people in my circle that I had met from helping grow that revenue vertical and go to these conferences, I quickly became an early voice in like that emerging tech space from the finance side of things. Fun fact, I was one of the very first 5 finance voices that got involved kind of in the Web3 space as a whole. So a lot of the early decisions in the US around regulation and how you treat digital assets on financials, like those were discussions that I was having with other individuals, having a coffee like in Denver at a conference. Those were not like structured government decisions. That came later. And so I think there's always a mindset progression, but I was really fortunate, I think, to not jump into it completely blind. But I think you're always progressing. The second you stop learning, I mean, like you're the dumbest person you'll ever know.
Yeah. I think that's incredible. Just being in the room with those casual conversations, and looking back, like I can look back on your life that you've just shared and how incredible that is. So that must feel incredible for you too, to look back on. I've had a pretty fulfilling life.
Yeah, it is. It's funny because of, we had, and by we, my husband and I had a conversation, I don't know, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, like when we very first met and we were really getting to know each other. He asked me like, what will be your litmus test for like when you've quote unquote made it? And my answer then, I love cars. And so my answer then was like, oh, I'll have enough money to get like a Ferrari, like very young person mentality. And now I'm sitting in basically my mid 40s, very, very different place in life than I thought I would be. I would venture to even say not nearly as financially successful as I thought I would be at this point in my life and career. Yet I feel more fulfilled with my life and career than I think had I gone a more traditional route and made 10x what I do now. And so the answer now is very different, because if then that was the answer was, oh, I want this material item, which there's nothing wrong with. But what's changed for me personally is I think as a human, I've grown and I realize there's so much more than that. And so my personal, I've made it is I will have an impact, right, on the world around me, and it won't be about me, which is kind of a Buddhist mentality. I'm not Buddhist by any means, but I like the idea behind it. They have this kind of frame of thought that we are all essentially drops of water, in an ocean, and we come from that and then we go back to that. And I've always really liked the idea of when you take a drop of water, right, and you drop it, what happens is you see the rings, but it's back in with the greater good of the water, so you don't see that drop anymore. And so that's very much like in my mind how I will feel like I have made it at that point is I will have rings. There will be impacts from the things that I have done everywhere, all over the world in positive ways, probably plenty of negative as well. But my handprint, who I am, my whatever, won't be attached to it.
I think that's such a great analogy. And, you've worked with many other businesses. You're now mentoring business owners. Are there some common challenges or themes that you've seen come up that you've had to give guidance around?
Yeah, I think frequently at the beginning, it's underestimated the amount of work it's going to take. That's always probably the number one that's underestimated, what the path looks like, and the importance of the people you surround yourself with from day one. Projects, whether they are tech projects with emerging tech or small and medium businesses in a local setting, they're made or broken based off of those initial people involved. And I've unfortunately lived that firsthand, but I've also seen the opposite of that, where it's been wildly successful because of that core group of people. So obviously that's probably a big one. And then just being able to disseminate. I think like a lot of founders of companies struggle to take their idea and know how to roll that out. So I like to, whether it's donating my time through a nonprofit that I'm involved in locally, or now having actually an offering that is accessible at various levels, which I'm working on now to roll out to business owners, helping them learn how they eat that whale one bite at a time. Because if not everybody has the ability to kind of take that step back and look at the bigger picture and understand like, okay, here's this great idea, but now what do I do with it?
Yeah. Oh, so good. Such a good point. I love to wrap up with this question. The time's kind of flying by and it's been so good. I think we could talk forever and probably go deeper on all these different topics. But if you were to go back in time to your younger entrepreneur self, what advice would you give yourself?
Ooh, that's such a good question. Probably I would want to be uncomfortable sooner. I think for a very long time, I shied away from putting myself in uncomfortable positions. Not entirely. Like when I was in public accounting early in my career, I intentionally would pick up the sloppy, messy work that no one else wanted because I knew I would learn more that way. So I encourage people to do that because if you do learn a lot very quickly when you are the one that dives into the muck the fastest, and most people don't want it. So that also wins you a lot of praise from your bosses. But the other piece of me, I think, was so afraid. I was so worried about what people thought about me, and having like I thrive on affirmation, and I know that now about myself. I think I would probably go back and tell myself to get more okay with not needing that affirmation. That it doesn't matter what other people think, that if I know I'm headed in the right direction and I'm giving it my all and I'm learning and I'm still like just chugging along, making progress and continuing to be inquisitive, I'm doing everything I need to be doing. I think I like undercut myself in a lot of the ways I could have excelled faster. But I'm thankful for that now because if without that journey, I wouldn't be who I am.
Yeah. So sharing that, there's a lot of our members who are growing to six figures for the first time ever in their business. They might have done it in corporate or a different role, but not in their business yet. And that's the thing that they're going to need to embrace is how quickly can you get uncomfortable, and it's going to be harder than you expect it to be. There's also a lot of our members who are transitioning from they've hit their mid six figures and they're working towards their first seven figures, and they're having to learn how to delegate and let go of that control. Any other guidance before we wrap up here that we missed or that you want to share before we close out?
Yeah, there's two key pieces I think are applicable to both of those kinds of individuals and pretty much everyone. The first one is delegation is like so important, but the smartest and most successful people at the businesses that we all admire, they learned very quickly, not just how to delegate, but how to recognize where their own weaknesses were and hire people that were great at those. Like the sooner you can identify where you're terrible and stop focusing on trying to be average at it and hire someone else that is excellent at it, the faster you will excel past that. Like that will make delegations so much easier. That's the first piece. The second thing, and I think this is probably the most important in my opinion, is the best leaders recognize that this isn't a zero-sum game, meaning there is enough for everybody, and the absolute most effective leadership that really impacts change and has successful businesses are the ones who have the ability to bring everybody up with them so that someday when they step away and they aren't there, you never knew they were. And it kind of goes back to that same service attitude that I have of, the water droplet. And the key with that is truly like the best leaders do teach other people how to replace yourself. The faster you can teach others to replace you, the more effective you are as a leader.
I love that. Yeah. Every time we go and launch a new business, people are thinking, before they've launched, it's not necessarily the right time to have the question, but I actually think about it before you launch any businesses. How long is it going to take for me to replace myself in this new venture? What's my runway here? So I love that. That's so good. So many gems today, Amber. I really appreciated you being on here and doing this with me, and so good. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to follow the show so you don't miss an episode. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you're going to love what we have coming up. If you found value in what you heard, share it with a friend who might need it too. Until next time, keep building your dream life and your dream business.